Hey there, fellow developers! Today we are going to discuss something that might seem a bit old school, but trust me, it's still very much relevant in our modern world of coding: command line tools. You might think, why do I need command line tools when I have fancy graphical UIs and cloud technologies? Well, stick around and I'll show you how command line tools can be your secret weapon in the world of development. Let's dive in. A lot of tools that developers use today have a graphical UI, and it's convenient. Some tools are standalone GUI applications, some of them have UI wrappers, and some are integrated into IDEs. Traditionally, most of the classic command line tools come from Unix-based systems. If you ever had to work with a Linux server, you know what I mean. But what if you don't need to deal with a Linux server at all? Cloud technologies today allow you to go completely serverless. So why do you need command line tools? Depending on what platform you're developing for, command line tools may or may not be part of your toolbox. But most developers end up using them anyway. Even if you are working on a standalone Windows application, you may need to run some PowerShell scripts, for example. And if you're a web developer, then command line tools are your best friends forever. If you work with JavaScript, you need tools like npm or yarn to install packages. For PHP, you need Composer and Pair. For Python, you need pip and so on. The next thing is Git, a de facto standard for version control in the industry. You can find graphical UI wrappers for Git, but what if you need to run it on a server that only has a command line available? A lot of popular coding frameworks have code generators. They create a skeleton of your application along with some handy settings for your development tools. There's also the Yeoman project. It includes a ton of generators for different languages and frameworks. All these tools are command line based. When it comes to deployment, you need to automate it. Platforms like GitLab allow you to build very flexible deployment pipelines. But each step includes command line scripts that do the actual job. Are you planning to use Docker to run your application? To build a Docker image, you have to use command line scripts in your Docker file. Hopefully, I gave you enough evidence of how important the command line is. So, where do you start? First, make sure you learn how to launch a command line shell in your environment. If you are on a Mac, you just need to run your terminal app. If you are on Windows, the basic thing is the standard CMD application. For more advanced scripting, there's PowerShell. You can also install an app that emulates a Unix environment, like Git Bash. Some IDEs have a built-in terminal as well. The next thing is to learn how to navigate the file system, changing directories and listing their contents. Learn how to write paths, both absolute and relative to the current directory. You should also know how to create directories and copy, move, delete, and rename files. When you are familiar with navigation and basic file operations, you also need to learn how to run your tools. For example, you may need to properly reference a file even if it's in the current directory. Also, there are different conventions on passing options to the commands depending on the system. If you work mainly on Unix systems, make sure to learn how to use piping. It's a handy concept when you need to pass the output of one command to another. You may need to pass some configuration parameters as environment variables when running your applications. Different operating systems have different ways of defining those. So you need to learn how to create, update, and delete environment variables. Sometimes you may need to see what's inside a text file or make a quick edit. Working on a remote server, command line is often the only thing you have. There are different ways of listing a file's content. You can output the whole file or get a few lines at the end of the file. It comes in handy when you are looking at the logs and you just want the most recent entries. Another option is to filter out the lines that match a specific search string. You can use the grep command on a Unix system to do that. Also, there are different text editors. On Unix platforms, Vim is probably the most known one. But it has a very steep learning curve. A better choice here could be Nano. I usually use it when I need to tweak some configuration files. Speaking of remote Unix servers, make sure to learn how to connect to them using SSH. SSH is a secure protocol for connecting over an unsecured network. It's a de facto standard when connecting to a remote Unix-based server. Running the SSH command itself is pretty straightforward, but first, you need to configure it properly. You may need to generate an SSH key first and add it to the server so that it can authenticate you. Different SSH client apps are available for Mac, Windows, iOS, and Android. They offer many features, so definitely look into these if you plan to use SSH quite often. If you want to go a bit deeper, you can look into writing your own command line scripts. They come in handy when you find yourself running the same commands over and over again. You can automate it by creating a script. Or maybe you need to set some configuration parameters as environment variables before starting your application. As I said, which tools you specifically need depends on the platform you're developing for. But the command line is a universal one. You can do pretty fancy things with it, like automated text search and transformation, different file conversions, downloading, and so on. On the other hand, it's just another tool in your toolbox. Over time, you'll figure out for yourself which tools work best in different scenarios. Alright, that's a wrap on command line tools. We've learned that they can be helpful in absolutely different situations. Remember, these tools are versatile and can make your life as a developer much easier. So don't be afraid of the command line. Invest some time to learn it and watch your productivity grow in no time. Thanks for watching, and if you found this video helpful, be sure to like, share, and subscribe for more content like this. See you next time!